Chandigarh was never known only for roads, sectors, and planning maps. It was known for something deeper. It was known for peace of mind. It was known as a city where families could live with dignity, where homes were not just assets, but anchors of stability. And that is why the Sharewise property issue in Chandigarh is not just a legal dispute. It is not merely a technical question of mutation, registration, or building plans. It is a human issue. It is a family issue. It is an issue about whether a lawful resident who has invested lifetime savings in a house can actually use that property in a meaningful way when life demands it. Today, many ordinary residents find themselves in a painful situation. They may hold a lawful undivided share in a house. They may have lived there for years. They may have bought that share honestly, registered it, paid dues, paid taxes, and treated it as part of their family's security. But now, because of the present legal and administrative approach, that same share may become difficult to sell, difficult to mutate, difficult to finance, and in some cases practically frozen. That is where the real problem begins. In simple terms, a Sharewise property transaction means that a person buys an undivided fractional share in a house or plot. Legally, it is not always described as ownership of a separate floor. But in practice, many such arrangements work in a floor-based manner. One co-owner may occupy the ground floor, another the first floor, another the second floor, often through an understanding, a settlement deed, or a private arrangement. This is where the controversy arose. Authorities and courts became concerned that such arrangements were being used to indirectly convert one residential house into multiple independent apartments. That concern became stronger after the repeal of the Chandigarh Apartment Rules, 2001. The thinking was this: if apartmentalization was not to be allowed directly, then it should not be permitted indirectly through share sales, plus private floor allocation. That concern is not imaginary. There can be misuse. There can be attempts to bypass planning rules. There can be cases where one dwelling unit is effectively turned into several independent units by clever paperwork. But the question is not whether misuse exists. The question is whether the answer to misuse should be a system that punishes genuine residents as well. The legal background is important. Chandigarh's property and planning system does not operate like an entirely private real estate market. It is governed by a public law framework rooted in the capital of Punjab, Development and Regulation Act, 1952, along with later rules such as the Chandigarh Estate Rules, 2007, the Chandigarh Building Rules, 2017, and the city's master plan controls. These rules emphasize planning discipline and contain a strong anti-fragmentation logic. Then came major court interventions. The Punjab and Haryana High Court noted that after the apartment rules were repealed in 2007, the practice of share sale plus floor occupation expanded as an indirect method of achieving what apartmentalization would have allowed directly. Later, on 10th of January 2023, the Supreme Court took a very serious view of this pattern. It treated the share plus floor allocation model as a device that could indirectly create multiple apartments inside one single dwelling unit. The court objected particularly to building plans and MOUs that facilitated such floor-wise bifurcation. Soon after that, the Estate Office issued a public notice effective from 10th of February 2023. That notice allowed transfers within family, allowed transactions that resulted in 100% ownership in one buyer or one family, and restricted other transfers or mutations. It also restricted building plan approvals to cases where all co-owners were from the same family. Later, in February 2025, the Punjab and Haryana High Court upheld that notice, though the matter remains under challenge before the Supreme Court. So yes, the legal position became restrictive, but the policy question is still very much alive. The real hardship is not suffered by speculators first. It is suffered by ordinary households. Think of the resident who spent decades building a house and later sold one portion in the form of a lawful share to meet family responsibilities. Think of an elderly person who now wants to sell part of a share to create monthly income through a fixed deposit. Think of a parent trying to raise funds for a daughter's marriage. Think of someone facing medical treatment. children's education costs, or repayment of an old emergency loan. These are not luxury transactions. These are normal life events. When such a person is told that the share exists but cannot be freely sold, that it may be recognized in one context but not in another, that it may be inherited but not easily financed, that it may be registered but still remain commercially crippled, then the property stops being real security. It becomes trapped wealth. And trapped wealth is not peace of mind. It is anxiety. This issue is even more sensitive in Chandigarh because many families still live with a strong sense of family continuity. Joint living arrangements, informal family settlements, succession planning, and co-ownership are not unusual social realities. When the legal system creates uncertainty around the future usability of a share, it does not just affect documents, it enters the household itself. A joint family begins to worry. Can one member exit later if needed? Can a share be settled fairly between brothers or heirs? Can a widow rely on her share? Can children raise a bank loan against it? Will future inheritance create more confusion rather than stability? That fear itself becomes dangerous. Because once people start feeling insecure inside the same home, suspicion begins. And suspicion turns into dispute. A law that should ideally reduce family conflict may end up creating it. That is why this issue must not be seen only through a narrow planning lens. It has deep social consequences. Much of the litigation has drawn attention to Phase 1, especially the heritage sectors, and to the special character of what is often called Corbusian Chandigarh. That heritage concern is real and should not be casually dismissed. But there is still a serious question here. If Chandigarh is one city, and if Sharewise ownership is a city-wide social and economic issue, can there really be a permanently divided ownership philosophy for the same city? Can one family in one part of Chandigarh feel secure in lawful share ownership, while another family elsewhere must live under uncertainty? Can the marketability of a lawful residential share depend on shifting sector classifications, evolving committee views, and changing administrative mood? Is that a stable legal system? The stronger policy argument is that Chandigarh needs one intelligible, city-wide rule. Not confusion, not selective enforcement, not uncertainty. One clear rule. Because once you start operating with different practical ownership realities in different parts of the same city, litigation multiplies, administration becomes unpredictable, and residents lose confidence. The better solution is not a blanket ban, and it is not a confusing distinction that leaves residents waiting for committees, clarifications, and exceptions. The better solution is straightforward. Recognize lawful Sharewise ownership across the city. Allow lawful transfer and mutation of undivided residential shares. Allow such shares to remain usable for family settlements, inheritance, sale, and finance. But at the same time, impose clear safeguards against misuse. That means the law can say this with complete clarity. No single floor shall be treated as two separate legal dwelling units. No building plan that is plainly designed to create prohibited apartmentalization should be sanctioned. No private MOU should be used to defeat the planning regime by creating an unlawful legal fiction. And no one should be allowed to convert one house into multiple stranger-occupied apartments by disguise. This is the right balance. Target the misuse directly. Do not paralyze the genuine owner. A fair-minded system can also acknowledge that not every transaction is identical. If the administration honestly believes that certain builder-floor transactions impose an added civic burden, then it has regulatory tools available. It may consider an additional levy or a stamp duty surcharge on that category of transactions. But that is where fairness matters. If such a levy is ever imposed, it should not become just another revenue collection device. It should be transparently linked to resident welfare, neighborhood maintenance, civic infrastructure, public support systems, and the stability of local communities. That approach is far more sensible than freezing the rights of ordinary households who are not attempting any unlawful apartmentalization at all. One of the most overlooked parts of this issue is banking. lawful sharewise ownership should not become commercially useless. If the state recognizes a share for the purpose of purchase, registration, taxation, and inheritance, then that same share should not suddenly become weak or invisible when a family needs a loan, a mortgage, or financial support. Because a property that cannot support finance is only half alive in economic terms. It may exist in documents, but not in real life. And that hits the middle class hardest. It hits senior citizens hardest. It hits families who do not have huge liquidity reserves. When they need funds, the house is supposed to give security. If lawful sharewise ownership cannot perform that role, then the law has converted a home into a trapped asset. That is neither modern nor humane, and it is certainly not resident-friendly. This must also be said fairly. The courts are not simply objecting to every share transfer as such. The deeper objection is to the misuse of share transfer as a route to unlawful floorwise apartmentalization. That distinction is crucial. The judicial concern is strongest where paperwork and building design are being used as a facade to create multiple separate units in a manner contrary to planning control. So the answer is not to destroy all share utility. The answer is to control the facade. That means stricter scrutiny of building plans, clear non-recognition of unlawful floorwise bifurcation, and robust action against misuse where it is actually proved. But once that is done, the law should step back and allow genuine residents to live, settle, transfer, finance, and secure their homes in the ordinary course. Public policy should say this very clearly. Chandigarh remains a planned city, but it must also remain a humane city. Planning order matters, heritage matters, infrastructure matters, but so do fairness, family stability, and peace of mind. The law should not leave a lawful resident with paper ownership and no practical freedom. It should not push families into doubt. It should not encourage future disputes inside households. And it should not create a climate where the ordinary resident feels that lawful property has become economically unsafe. A citywide issue needs a citywide answer. One clear rule, one transparent framework, one resident-sensitive policy. That policy should preserve lawful sharewise ownership, allow its normal financial and family utility, and stop only what truly deserves to be stopped: unlawful apartmentalization through disguised fragmentation. In the final analysis, the Chandigarh Sharewise property issue is not just about flaws, plans, or mutation entries. It is about whether the law still has room for the ordinary resident. It is about the elderly owner who needs security. It is about the parent who needs flexibility. It is about the joint family that needs stability. It is about whether a lawful home remains a source of peace or becomes a source of stress. Chandigarh should not become a city where lawful owners hold title on paper but cannot meaningfully sell, settle, finance, or rely on that property when life genuinely requires it. The better course is clear. Protect planning, prevent misuse, but preserve the ordinary utility of lawful sharewise ownership. Because a truly planned city is not one that merely controls buildings. It is one that protects the confidence of the people who live in them.